When the summons arrived, I thought it was a mistake. That's the first thing I remember, the cold official envelope sitting crooked in my mailbox, its edges slightly damp from the morning rain. My name typed in neat, lifeless letters. My ex-husband's name printed underneath, Family Court. I stood there on my porch, barefoot, a coffee cup cooling in my hand, staring at it like it was some kind of cruel joke. We had been divorced for nearly a year by then, and though things weren't perfect, we'd managed to keep things civil, at least. That's what I thought. The sound of birds was faint that morning, and the smell of wet earth filled the air. My daughter, Lily, was inside humming along to some cartoon theme song. My son, Max, was upstairs, his footsteps rhythmic above me as he got ready for school. For a brief moment, I almost convinced myself to leave the envelope unopened, to let the illusion of peace stretch a little longer. But peace, as I've learned, doesn't survive in silence. It's always interrupted. I tore it open with shaking fingers. The words swam before my eyes: petition for full custody, filed by Daniel Harper, my ex-husband. I remember how my body went cold, how the cup slipped from my hand and hit the porch railing, spilling coffee down the side. It wasn't just the words that broke me. It was the betrayal of them. The understanding that the man who once held my hand through labor, who promised to co-parent kindly, now wanted to erase me from our children's lives. I stood there, my pulse pounding in my ears, whispering to no one, "Why, Daniel, why would you do this?" Before all that, life was quiet, normal in the way that ordinary pain becomes background noise after a while. After our divorce, I'd settled into a small 2-bedroom house on the edge of town. The place smelled of pine floors and laundry detergent, and every evening I lit a candle just to make it feel less empty. I had joint custody of Lily and Max, 1 week with me, 1 week with him. We'd agreed to alternate holidays, birthdays, even dentist appointments. At first, Daniel had been polite, distant, but polite. He'd remarried quickly to a woman named Sophie. She was younger, with perfect hair and a quiet, soft-spoken way about her that made people instantly like her. I tried to, too. I really did. There were moments I'd see them together, at Lily's school recital or at the grocery store, and I'd feel this ache in my chest. Not jealousy exactly, just loss, like watching someone else move into a house you'd built from scratch. My children adjusted faster than I expected. Max was 12, old enough to understand that his father and I weren't enemies. Lily was 8, and she still drew pictures of all 4 of us, me, her dad, Sophie, and herself, holding hands under rainbows. I used to smile and tape them to the fridge, pretending the crayon world she drew could exist in reality. Daniel and I rarely spoke beyond logistics. Drop-offs, pickups, school forms. He'd call sometimes, his tone clipped, efficient. "I'll have them back Sunday night." "Can you send Lily's ballet shoes?" She left them here. It wasn't warm, but it worked. And after everything we'd been through, the years of silent dinners, the endless arguments about money, his long business trips that turned out to be more than business, working was enough for me. I had a part-time job at a local accounting firm. My boss was kind, the hours flexible. My life revolved around my kids, their routines, their laughter echoing in the hallway. There were lonely nights, of course, when the house was too quiet, when I'd scroll through old photos and remember who we used to be. But I told myself it was fine, peaceful even, until that envelope arrived. That evening, I sat at my dining table with the document spread open like a wound. The accusations were absurd, claims that I was emotionally unstable, that I'd been neglectful, that I lacked a stable financial environment. Lies. So cleanly written they almost looked believable. Breath hitched as I read. Every line felt like a blade. I called him. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Daniel," I said, my voice trembling, I just got your petition. Tell me this is some kind of misunderstanding." "It's not," he replied flatly. "I think it's best for the kids to have one stable home." "And that's yours?" I almost laughed. "You barely see them during your weeks." "They tell me Sophie handles everything." "She's their stepmother," he cut in sharply. "She cares about them." "Then why are you doing this?" "Because it's what's right," he said. "You're making this harder than it has to be." The line went dead. I sat there, staring at my reflection in the dark window. My own face looked strange, pale, hollow-eyed, frightened. And beneath the fear, something else began to stir. Anger. The kind that burns quietly, like a candle under glass. I promised myself I wouldn't fall apart. Not again. In the weeks that followed, I hired a lawyer, a soft-spoken man named James, who believed in fairness. Or at least he said he did. "Custody battles can get messy," he warned me gently, adjusting his glasses. "But if you've done nothing wrong, we'll prove it." I wanted to believe him. But Daniel was always good at creating appearances. He was charming in courtrooms and dinner parties, the kind of man people trusted on sight. Still, something about his confidence unsettled me. At one of the early hearings, I noticed Sophie sitting in the back. She avoided my eyes. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her handbag, but she didn't say a word. When Daniel spoke, she nodded along, a silent shadow of agreement. After court, as we were leaving, she approached me. "I'm sorry about all this," she murmured, not meeting my gaze. "You don't need to apologize," I said, though my voice was colder than I intended. He thinks it's best for them," she said quickly, her tone rehearsed. I watched her walk away, heels clicking against the marble floor. There was something in her eyes, guilt maybe, or fear. Later that night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she asked quietly, "Mom, is Daddy mad at you?" "No, sweetheart," I whispered, brushing her hair from her forehead. "He just sees things differently right now." "Sophie said Daddy's sad because you don't like her." "That's not true," I said, though I felt my heart twist. After she fell asleep, I sat in the dark hallway, listening to her slow breathing. That's when it hit me. Sophie was trying to comfort me, but also to distance herself. She was conflicted, trapped between loyalty and conscience. And for the first time, I wondered what Daniel had promised her. Because men like him didn't change. They just changed their audience. A few days later, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, there was silence. Then a woman's voice, trembling. "It's Sophie." I froze. "Please don't tell Daniel I called," she said quickly. "But I need to talk to you. It's about the case." My heart pounded. "What about it?" "There's something you need to see. Something he doesn't want you to find out." I didn't know then that this call would change everything. Not just the case, but the way I saw my past, my marriage, and the man I'd once loved. It was the first crack in his perfect facade. And through it, the truth was finally beginning to shine. Sophie wanted to meet somewhere private. That was her word, private. Not secret, not hidden, but it meant the same thing. We agreed on a small cafe near the courthouse, the kind with wobbly chairs and old jazz playing through ceiling speakers. I arrived early, half convinced she wouldn't show. But then she walked in, her hair tied back, oversized sunglasses covering half her face, the kind of look you wear when you're afraid of being recognized. She spotted me instantly and sat down across from me without a word. Her hands were trembling so badly she had to set her coffee cup down twice before she could hold it steady. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "You said it was important," I replied. She nodded, glancing around. Then, with a deep breath, she pulled a small folder from her purse and pushed it across the table. "What's this?" "Proof," she whispered. "About Daniel, about why he's doing this. I hesitated before opening it. Inside were printed emails, financial statements, and a handwritten letter. In Daniel's writing. My stomach clenched as I began to read. He'd promised her everything. In one email he wrote, "Once the kids are fully with me, we can move forward properly. Travel, buy the house in Miami, start the business. I'll finally be free of the constant interruptions." Free of the constant interruptions. That's how he saw our children. Interruptions. Another line caught my eye. "Don't worry. The custody thing is just for image. My lawyer says it'll make me look responsible in front of investors. Once it's settled, we'll hire a nanny. You won't have to lift a finger." The room felt smaller. My breath came shallow, and I could hear my heartbeat echoing in my ears. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked quietly. Sophie swallowed hard. "Because I didn't sign up for this," she said. "He told me you were unstable, that you didn't care about the kids, but now I see how he talks about them, about you. He lies so easily it scares me." I looked at her, this woman who'd once felt like my replacement, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt pity. She was caught in his web, just like I had been. "You could be risking everything," I said. "I already have," she replied, eyes glistening. "He monitors my messages, my calls. He doesn't trust me anymore." We sat in silence, for a while, the weight of our shared history pressing between us. Then she reached out and touched my hand lightly. "Please, use this. I can't testify, but you can show your lawyer. Just don't tell him where it came from." I nodded slowly, tucking the folder into my bag. When I left the cafe, the air outside felt sharper, cleaner, as if the universe had cracked open to let some light through. For the first time in months, I had something stronger than fear. I had the truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table under the dim light, the folder spread open before me. Each page told a story I hadn't wanted to believe, one of manipulation, greed, and control. Memories came flooding back. His late-night calls during our marriage, the hidden credit cards, the way he'd twist every argument until I was the one apologizing. Daniel was always 2 steps ahead, charming in public, cutting in private. He knew how to make people doubt themselves, and for years he'd made me believe I was difficult, emotional, overreacting. Now reading those words, I realized he hadn't changed. He'd just found a new stage. At dawn, I called my lawyer. James sounded alert, even excited when I told him what I'd found. "If these documents are authentic, they could change everything," he said. "But we'll need to handle it carefully. Chain of custody, admissibility. We can't let it look like it came from inside his home. What do we do?" "We verify the financial statements first. If those line up with public records, we'll introduce them as evidence. The emails will need metadata, but the handwriting—" He paused. "That's his, isn't it?" "Yes," I whispered. We spent the next few weeks building the case quietly. I went about my days pretending nothing had changed. During drop-offs, I smiled politely at Daniel, even when he smirked. That smug, rehearsed smile that used to make my stomach twist. Once, as he handed Lily her backpack, he leaned closer and said, "You don't have to fight this, you know. You'll lose eventually. Might as well save yourself the embarrassment." I met his gaze and said nothing, just smiled, because I already knew something he didn't. His own words were waiting to undo him. The next court date came sooner than expected. I remember sitting on that hard wooden bench, clutching my notes, while Daniel spoke confidently about being the more stable parent. His lawyer painted a picture of me as anxious, unreliable, financially dependent. When it was my turn, James stood, his tone measured but sharp. "Your Honor," he began, "before proceeding, we'd like to submit supplemental evidence regarding the petitioner's intent and credibility." The courtroom went silent. "Daniels." Lawyer looked confused, then uneasy, as James handed a sealed folder to the judge. My heart raced. Sophie's face flashed in my mind. The judge flipped through the pages, brow furrowing deeper with each line. Then she looked up, eyes narrowing. "Mr. Harper," she said, "would you like to explain these correspondences?" Daniel blinked. I don't know what that is." "They appear to be emails between yourself and your current wife, discussing plans to gain full custody for the purpose of financial and reputational benefit. Is that not correct?" he stammered. His lawyer scrambled to object, but the damage was done. The courtroom murmured. Even the clerk paused mid-typing. I sat still, my palms slick with sweat, but inside something fierce began to rise. Not vengeance, not even triumph. Just justice. The judge adjourned early, citing serious questions regarding the petitioner's intent. As we left the courtroom, Daniel turned to me, his face red, his jaw clenched. "You think this changes anything?" he hissed. "It changes everything," I said quietly. And for once, he had no comeback. In the weeks that followed, things began to unravel for him, not just in court, but everywhere. His investors backed out of his new business venture after word of the custody manipulation leaked through the legal grapevine. Sophie moved out quietly one night, leaving him alone in their big, empty house. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The truth had done the work for me. My lawyer advised me to stay composed. "The court respects dignity," he said, and so I did, even when I wanted to scream, to tell the world what he'd put me through. When we met for the final hearing, Daniel looked smaller somehow. His tie crooked, eyes tired. The judge ruled in my favor, joint custody reaffirmed, with an added clause ensuring my primary authority over school and health decisions. It wasn't just a legal win. It was a moral one. Afterwards, outside the courthouse, I found Sophie waiting by the steps. "You didn't have to come," I told her. "I wanted to," she said softly. "I needed to see it end." We stood there, two women bound by the same man's lies, finally free from them. She gave me a small smile. "He'll never admit it, but you won." "It's not about winning," I said. "It's about my kids knowing the truth." She nodded. "You're stronger than I was." I reached out and touched her arm gently. "You did the brave thing. You told the truth." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she turned and walked away, her figure fading into the afternoon crowd. That night, as I tucked Lily and Max into bed, Lily whispered, "Mom, are we staying here forever now?" I smiled. "Yes, sweetheart, this is our home." She hugged me tight, her little arms warm around my neck. "I knew Daddy was wrong," she murmured sleepily. I brushed her hair back and kissed her forehead. "You just remember this," I whispered. "Truth always finds its way home." And as I turned off the light, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The kind that isn't borrowed or begged for, the kind you earn. In the days following the ruling, the silence in my home felt different, not heavy anymore, but whole. The hum of the refrigerator, the laughter spilling from the kids' rooms, even the soft creak of the hallway floorboards. It all felt like music I hadn't heard in years. But peace after war doesn't come easily. There were still echoes of him everywhere. The smell of his cologne that lingered on Max's backpack, the way Lily would still ask if Daddy was coming to her school play, the pile of legal folders that sat unopened on my kitchen counter like unwanted guests. I'd stare at them sometimes, tracing the edges with my fingers. Those documents had nearly torn my life apart, yet, ironically, they'd also saved it. One evening, as I folded laundry, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. "It's Sophie. Can we talk?" I hesitated before typing back. "Of course. Are you okay?" "I don't know. He's been calling saying I ruined his life. I'm scared he'll show up here." I felt my chest tighten. For all his arrogance, I knew Daniel's pride could be dangerous when cornered. "You're not responsible for his choices," I wrote. "He did this to himself. But if you feel unsafe, go to someone you trust. Or call me." There was a pause before her next reply. "Thank you. I don't know who else to talk to." We ended up meeting that weekend at a park. Neutral ground. She looked thinner, worn. The spark that had once drawn him to her was dimmed now, replaced by something fragile and quiet. "He keeps saying I betrayed him," she said softly. "You told the truth," I replied. "That's not betrayal. He doesn't see it that way. He thinks everyone's out to get him." I sighed, watching the leaves drift across the path. "That's how he keeps control, by making everyone else feel guilty for his actions." Sophie gave a small, bitter laugh. "I used to think he just wanted love. Now I think he just wanted obedience." We sat there for a while, the cold wind brushing our hair, two women quietly grieving the same illusion, the man we thought he was. Before she left, she turned to me and said something I'll never forget. "He always told me you were weak, but you're not. You just refuse to be cruel." I didn't respond then, but her words stayed with me. Because she was right. My strength had never been in shouting or fighting. It was in standing still, in refusing to let bitterness define me. It didn't take long for the whispers to spread through town. Small communities have long memories, and Daniel had built his image on perfection. The successful businessman, the charming father, the picture of stability. When the truth came out, that image cracked like glass. At first it was subtle. People stopped greeting him at the grocery store. Invitations to networking events quietly disappeared. Then came the fallout. One of his partners withdrew from a joint investment, citing ethical concerns. His name started to fade from the local business pages. I didn't gloat. I couldn't, because even as he fell, he was still the father of my children. And I knew one day they'd have questions. One afternoon, Max came home from school quieter than usual. He dropped his backpack by the door and went straight to his room. When I followed him, he was sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at his hands. "Did Dad lie to the court?" he asked suddenly. The question hit me like a punch. "Why do you ask that?" "Some kids at school said their parents saw something online. And about Dad in the case." I sat beside him, taking a slow breath. "Your dad made some bad choices," I said carefully. "He tried to do something that wasn't fair to us. But what matters is, the truth came out." He nodded, eyes wet. "I just don't understand why he'd do that. I thought he loved us." I reached over and took his hand. "He does love you. But sometimes love gets twisted when people try to control it. What he did wasn't right, but that doesn't mean your love for him has to change." Max was quiet for a long time before he whispered, "I wish he'd just told the truth." "Me too," I thought when Lily asked later that night. Her question was simpler. "Is Daddy bad?" And my answer even simpler. "No, sweetheart. Daddy made mistakes. We all do. But you can still love someone and not agree with what they've done." Because that's what I wanted them to learn. That forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting. Meanwhile, Daniel's calls grew less frequent. At first, they were angry. voicemails full of accusations, shouting about how I'd set him up. Then they turned apologetic, desperate even. "I just want to talk," he'd say. For the kids, but I'd learned to protect my peace. All communication went through lawyers or text messages limited to schedules. One evening, he showed up unannounced at the kids' school concert. I saw him standing at the back of the auditorium alone. He didn't approach us, didn't make a scene, but when Lily spotted him, she smiled and waved. And for a brief second, I saw something real flicker across his face. Guilt, maybe, or loss. After the show, as we were leaving, he caught my arm gently. "Thank you for letting them see me," he said quietly. I nodded. They deserve both parents. As long as you remember that means honesty, not control. He looked like he wanted to say more, but instead, he just nodded and stepped back. That moment, small, quiet, human, was the closest thing to closure I'd ever get from him. Months passed. The court papers gathered dust in a drawer. The kids settled into their routines again, and I began to rebuild myself, not the woman I used to be, but someone new. I started painting on weekends. Nothing serious, just colors and brushstrokes that matched my moods. There was something healing about creating without purpose, about watching beauty return where there'd once been chaos. I reconnected with old friends I'd drifted from during my marriage. They told me I seemed lighter now. One even joked, "You're glowing like someone who finally exhaled." And she was right. I had. Sophie moved to another town eventually. She sent me one last message before she left. "Thank you for not hating me. I hope we both find peace." I wished her well. Because in a strange way, she'd been part of my salvation. A reminder that sometimes the truth comes from the most unexpected place. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the house glowed with that golden hour warmth, Max came up behind me and hugged me tight. "You're the strongest person I know," he said. I smiled, blinking back tears. Strength isn't about fighting, Max. It's about standing when everything tries to push you down. He nodded, thoughtful. "I think you stood pretty tall, Mum." That night, after they went to bed, I stepped out onto the porch. The air was cool, the sky painted with stars. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the faint hum of the city. Life, moving on. I thought about all the versions of myself I'd been, the hopeful young wife, the heartbroken mother, the fighter in the courtroom, and I realized I was finally home in my own skin, because truth, no matter how long it hides, always finds its way back. And when it does, it doesn't just expose lies, it frees you. There's a quiet kind of victory that doesn't look like fireworks. It doesn't come with applause or headlines. It looks like a mother sitting on her porch after the storm has passed, watching her children chase fireflies in the dusk, safe, laughing, unbroken. That's the kind of victory I found. When I look back now, I don't think about the courtroom or the lies or even the betrayal. What stays with me are the moments in between, the nights when I almost gave up, the mornings when I held my children a little tighter and whispered to myself, "Just one more day." People often talk about truth like it's something bright, something that bursts through darkness all at once. But I've learned it's quieter than that. Truth doesn't shout. It waits. It endures. And when the lies finally crumble under their own weight, it's there, steady, unchanging, merciful. Daniel never apologized properly. Not really. But months after the final ruling, he sent a letter. No grand gestures, no flowers, just a plain white envelope with my name on it. Inside, there were only a few lines. I was angry. "I made things worse. I'm sorry for what I did to you." To them. "I hope someday they understand I tried, even when I failed." I read it once, folded it neatly, and placed it in a drawer. Not because I forgave him entirely, but because I didn't need to carry that anger anymore. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting what someone did. It's about refusing to let it shape who you become. Life is softer now. Lily paints with me on weekends, her hands always covered in more color than the canvas. Max helps me fix things around the house, pretending to be the man of the house, though I always remind him he's still my boy. Sometimes they ask about their dad. I tell them the truth, not the kind that hurts, but the kind that teaches. I tell them people make choices they later regret, that love doesn't always look like what we wish it would, and that integrity, that quiet, steady honesty, is worth more than any victory in court. The other day, Lily brought me one of her drawings. It was a picture of our family, me, her, Max, and Daniel, standing off to the side but still there. She'd drawn a small bridge between us. "It's so you can still talk," she said proudly. I smiled. "That's a beautiful bridge, sweetheart." And in that moment, I realized children have a way of seeing the world we forget as adults. They don't divide love into sides or seasons. They build bridges where we build walls. Sometimes at night I think about Sophie too. I wonder if she ever found peace in her new town, if she learned to trust herself again. I hope she did. Because despite everything, she reminded me that truth often needs a witness, someone brave enough to break the silence. It would have been easy to hate her, to see her as part of what broke my marriage. But when I think about it now, I see her as the mirror that helped me see my own strength. I think about the day she handed me that folder, the look in her eyes, the tremor in her hands, and I realize that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "This isn't right," and slides the truth across a cafe table. If you've ever found yourself standing in the ruins of what you thought was love, wondering if you'll ever feel whole again, let me tell you this, you will. It won't happen all at once. Healing comes in fragments. A laugh shared over breakfast, a night of unbroken sleep, a quiet morning when you catch your reflection and realize you look peaceful. There will be people who doubt you, who twist your words, who try to turn your kindness into weakness. Let them. Because there's a power in surviving betrayal with your heart still open. A strength that liars and manipulators will never understand. One day you'll wake up and the anger will be gone. Not because what happened was fair, but because it no longer deserves space in your life. And when that day comes, you'll see. Truth didn't just set you free. It built you into something unbreakable. These days, when I pass by the courthouse, I don't look away. I used to hate that building, the way it smelled of fear and formality. But now it feels like a reminder, not of pain, but of endurance. I survived the worst kind of deception, not the one from a stranger, but from someone who once promised to love me forever. And I walked out of it still kind, still hopeful, still me. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. You can lose almost everything, your marriage, your certainty, your trust, and still find yourself standing taller than before. Because dignity doesn't come from being untouched by pain. It comes from walking through it without letting it destroy your grace. So tonight, as I watch my children sleep, their faces peaceful under the glow of the nightlight, I whisper a small prayer, not for revenge, not even for justice, but for gratitude, for truth, for healing, for the strength to keep choosing love, even after betrayal, and for the hope that, somewhere out there, Daniel is learning what it means to love without control, and Sophie is learning to live without fear. As for me, I've learned that life doesn't always give you the closure you expect. Sometimes, the only closure you get is the one you create for yourself, by choosing peace over pride and truth over illusion. When someone you once trusted turns against you, it's easy to question everything, your worth, your judgment, even your sanity. But don't let their lies define your truth. Because truth, my dear friends, has its own timing. It may hide for a while, but it never disappears. It waits, quietly, patiently, for the right moment to rise. And when it does, it doesn't just expose the lies. It sets you free. So tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you have trusted his new wife when she reached out? Would you have risked believing that even the person tied to your betrayal might hold the key to your redemption? Tell me what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if my story reminded you that strength and softness can exist in the same heart, make sure you stay with me for more stories. Because here, in this little corner of the internet, we speak truths that others are too afraid to tell. Until next time, take care of your hearts. And remember, truth may be hidden, but it always finds its way home.